National Weather Service in Norman has issued a tornado warning for southwestern Oklahoma County.
This is May 3rd, all over again.
Oh my God,
said earlier, if you're not below ground, you will not survive.
Please take cover through the path of this thing.
Okay, the weather right now is going through southwest 140th.
How can history repeat itself? How can one town, one city no different from any other, get hit not once, but twice on two different occasions by tornadoes powerful enough to wipe anything off the face of the earth? It's a question that can never truly be answered, but it's something that the residents of Moore, Oklahoma have experienced firsthand. On May 3rd, 1999, Moore was struck by what is widely considered to be one of, if not the strongest tornado of all time. With wind gusts measured in excess of 300 miles per hour, it decimated the rural community of Bridge Creek before steamrolling through the city of Moore. Block after block was erased from the map, bare slabs and tattered lives left in its wake. Such widespread destruction had seldom been seen before, and those in Moore prayed that they'd never see such carnage in their backyards ever again. However, almost exactly 4 years later, on May 8, 2003, disaster struck yet again. An F4 tornado would tear through a large swath of Moore, even crossing the path of the 1999 F5. While the twister did its worst damage just outside of the city and thankfully caused no fatalities, the twister still did a large amount of damage within town. An unfortunate reminder of just how powerful and cruel Mother Nature could be. Surely, such a disaster couldn't happen a third time, right?
Hello from the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Norman. This is a severe weather update. We recorded this briefing at around 11 a.m. I'm Rick Smith, a meteorologist here at the Weather Service. We're going to be talking about our increasing concerns for significant severe weather later this afternoon into this evening.
– 2013 had been a quiet year in regards to tornado activity leading up to May. In fact, the tornado season had been historically inactive up to that point, with only 83 tornadoes reported in the US during the month of April, which averages around 203 twisters. May started out similarly quiet, but by the middle of the month, things were starting to ramp up. On May 15th, a violent EF4 tornado struck the town of Granbury, Texas, killing 6 people, a sign of what the rest of the month had in store. Less than a week later, the Storm Prediction Center began to watch out for the potential for widespread severe weather in the Great Plains. They would note that it was becoming increasingly evident that a broad trough was likely to park over portions of the central US in the coming days, likely to carry ample severe weather potential with it. As May 20th grew closer and closer, confidence would grow, leading the Storm Prediction Center to issue a moderate risk for much of Oklahoma, as well as far northern Texas, northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri, and extreme southeastern Kansas for that day. Like predicted, the trough had indeed positioned itself over the plains, and was associated with a low-pressure system over the upper Midwest, with a trailing cold front to the south. An elevated mixed layer, or EML, would act as a cap and increase instability by increasing rates of cooling with height, also known as lapse rates. With ample moisture and increasing instability across the region, meteorologists would grow increasingly concerned, leading them to investigate the setup further. Surface heating throughout the day would allow for the cap to erode, and at noon, the NWS office in Norman, Oklahoma would release a weather balloon, revealing a very unstable air mass in place across central Oklahoma. They would also note increasing winds with height, combined with directional change, which would go on to support updraft organization, and therefore the development of tornadic supercells. However, the balloon sounding would note that shear was nowhere near as strong compared to most other violent tornado cases. So, what happened that led to the outbreak we all know unfolded later in the day? To answer this question, we must take a look at upper air conditions. An embedded trough, or a shortwave, had ejected itself into the central plains by mid-afternoon. This shortwave was strong enough to spin up a secondary low over the main target area, playing a role to strengthen and back low-level winds, enhancing low-level shear. Forcing is locally stronger in this area as low-level winds converge towards the low-pressure center, another factor that would eventually aid in the development of supercell thunderstorms. With these aforementioned factors, the environment was primed for convective initiation, and at 2 p.m. Central, that's exactly what happened. As the storms fired up, one specific storm caught the eyes of most in Grady County, Oklahoma. This storm began as just a rain shower that had fired on the dry line, but within minutes had taken full advantage of the perfect conditions in place, using them to mature into a large, supercellular thunderstorm, with the Oklahoma City metro area right in its crosshairs. As the Grady County storm approached, large cumulonimbus clouds could be seen approaching from the southwest. This, combined with early television coverage from local TV stations, tipped many residents off to the approaching storm even before it was given a tornado warning. At 2:12 p.m. Central Daylight Time, a severe thunderstorm warning was issued for much of the southern metro area, including the city of Moore. Initial threats associated with the storm were half-dollar-sized hail and wind gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour, by and large a pretty regular occurrence for Oklahomans. Radar data from around the time this warning was issued similarly shows a rather unimpressive storm, with relatively low reflectivity values. However, rapid intensification would soon ensue, partially due to the merger the storm had just completed with another cell to its north. Storm mergers, on occasion, have been associated with a higher risk of tornado development, a subject we cover in more detail in our video on the 2011 Joplin EF5, another devastating twister that struck a large city just 2 years prior. Following the merger, rotation within the Moore storm would subsequently begin to develop, as a well-defined hook echo would form on the southwestern periphery of the cell. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service office in Norman were growing increasingly concerned by the storm's intensification and, at 2:40 p.m., made the choice to issue a tornado warning for Grady, Cleveland, McLean, and Oklahoma counties, with Moore in the center of the path of the oncoming storm. On the ground, storm chasers and civilians watched as a wall cloud developed overhead, the black clouds within it swirling violently as a funnel cloud slowly descended, creeping closer and closer to the ground. Just outside of the city of Newcastle, about 6 miles west of Moore, Charles Cook was stationed at a strip mall parking lot near the Newcastle Casino, observing the storm as it approached. He recorded as the funnel cloud first became visible, and captured the moment one of the most devastating tornadoes in U.S. history would touch down. Within seconds, a monster was born. The twister almost instantly reached EF4 intensity upon touching down, flattening several homes just outside of Newcastle, leaving only bare slabs and piles of debris in its wake. One house in this area was even considered for an EF5 rating. As the tornado moved northeast, it quickly transformed from a small stovepipe into a large, menacing wedge. The tornado would turn a dark shade of brown as it crossed over the Canadian River basin, ingesting large amounts of the red, iron-rich soil lining its banks. After crossing Interstate 44, the tornado would enter extreme southern portions of Oklahoma City, just to the west of Moore city limits. A subdivision centered along South May Avenue would be impacted directly in this area. Here, trees would be completely debarked, cars would be mangled, and more well-built homes would be destroyed and even slabbed. The damage done to this home was assessed at 200 miles per hour, just barely below EF5 status. 2 people residing within the house were sheltering in an above-ground closet when the twister struck. They suffered extensive injuries and were hospitalized, but ultimately survived. Storm chasers on the ground at this point would observe an increasingly growing tornado, partially shrouded in debris and rain as it moved into more densely populated areas. By this point, the National Weather Service office in Norman had already issued a tornado emergency for Moore and surrounding areas, the highest level of tornado warning the National Weather Service can issue. Tornado sirens were blaring throughout the city, and every news station in Oklahoma City was covering the twister. Most in the city immediately sought shelter, but a large number of worried parents raced towards area schools, where students were still being held, many unaware of just how strong the approaching tornado truly was. It was this rush of parents and other civilians on the road that led to a traffic jam along South Santa Fe Avenue, a major thoroughfare in Moore. KWTV, an Oklahoma City TV station, had its news chopper flying over the area at the time and caught sight of the jam as it was happening. With no time to waste, Chief Meteorologist Gary England, along with helicopter pilot Jim Gardner, whose voices were also being broadcast over area radio, realizing the danger of the situation at hand, gave instructions to those stuck along the street to take shelter in adjacent buildings or in nearby ditches, a decision that likely saved many lives. It was also around this time that the tornado struck the Orr family farm and the Celestial Acres horse training facility. Every building on both properties was swept away. All grass was torn out of the ground, leaving bare soil in its wake. Unfortunately, over 100 animals perished on both properties. Surveyors noted that the tornado was likely of EF5 intensity at this point in its life. As the tornado progressed further east, it directly impacted Briarwood Elementary School. Helpless as the vortex raged overhead, hundreds of students in grades K through 5 hunkered down in hallways and bathrooms, surrounded by dozens of teachers and staff who huddled over the kids, trying their best to shield them from the flying debris. One such teacher managed to record as the tornado passed overhead, capturing the haunting screams of those within the building and the twister's aftermath.
Okay. Wow. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, my house. Oh my God. 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 Oh my
Against all odds, all the children and staff at Briarwood escaped with their lives and without any significant injuries, despite much of the building being completely destroyed by wind speeds nearing 200 miles per hour. Just a few houses down the street, the twister produced its first area of EF5 damage. 2 well-built brick homes would be slabbed, reduced to nothing but bare concrete, despite the presence of anchor bolts. Countless other homes would experience EF4 damage as the twister crossed through the West Moore neighborhood, officially entering Moore city limits. As it did so, the tornado would begin to turn north, directly for downtown Moore. It was this northward turn that put Plaza Towers Elementary School right in the center of the tornado's path. Like at Briarwood, hundreds of children huddled together, taking shelter from the storm alongside their teachers. When the tornado hit, the entire roof was torn off, and several exterior walls collapsed. Here, the worst-case scenario unfolded. 7 third-grade students lost their lives. Several other students were injured, along with numerous teachers, some seriously. Most of the tornado's fatalities occurred at Plaza Towers or in adjacent homes, where extremely violent tornado damage was continuously documented. As the twister continued to curve northward, it radically decreased in size and somewhat in intensity, producing only EF3 damage as it passed just north of the Warren Theater. However, this trend wouldn't last long. The twister would stall as it passed over the Norman Regional Moore Medical Center before suddenly doing a rare loop, turning back west before rapidly shifting back to the southeast, a product of a failed occlusion. Occlusions typically occur near the end of a tornado's life, when the supercell producing it is recycling and forming a new tornado. For whatever reason, the Moore storm began this process but never completed it, resulting in the twister suddenly stalling and looping over itself. The twister's slow movement in this area and the fact that it looped over the same areas resulted in extreme damage, with 4 homes in the general vicinity of the loop suffering EF5 damage. The medical center itself suffered EF4 damage, further complicating the already complex recovery situation in the city. Despite the failed occlusion, the tornado wouldn't skip a beat intensity-wise, instantly going back to consistently producing violent damage, including an additional area of EF5 damage shortly after crossing Interstate 35. It was in this area that Nick Haskins and family were taking shelter in a concrete storm shelter located beneath their house. Recording as the twister struck, you can hear the tornado tearing their home apart just a few feet above their heads.
It's just debris. I'm sorry, I'm not. Here? Yeah, that debris still falling.
Go ahead.
Okay, Gary, we're at Western, and what's our east-west street? 134th and Western. It's about ready to cross Western here from the southwest. You can take our stream. It's right in front of us. The tornado is a very, very violent tornado. Like Val said, this is May 3rd, 1999, all over again. It's almost going down the same street that it did before. Okay, Gary, look at our stream. My goodness, this is an extremely violent, this is a killer tornado. And like you said earlier, if you're not below ground, you will not survive this tornado, Gary. You have a safe room. This is a killer tornado. The motion is amazing. Look at the motion here, Gary. It's crossing Western.
Oh my
it's about
God.
200 yards west of Western, Gary. It's moving more easterly than northeasterly now. But
After just barely missing Moore High School, the tornado would once again take on a more stovepipe appearance as it progressed to the east, but would still refuse to waver in intensity, producing yet another area of EF5 damage in the far eastern sections of Moore. One home in this area would have an entire section of its anchor bolts ripped out by the twister's winds. EF3 damage would be recorded a few blocks away at Highland East Junior High School, where the school gymnasium was completely destroyed. Thankfully, the main section of the school where all students and staff were sheltering was spared. Finally, the twister would exit Moore, beginning a continuous weakening trend just as it did so. After crossing State Route 77H, the twister would hit a farmstead at EF2 intensity, tearing its roof off and tossing a pickup truck on the property. At 3:35 p.m., the tornado would abruptly lift, ending its path of destruction just a few miles west of Lake Stanley Draper.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Oh. Oh my God, how do we even find the house? You okay? Oh my God. Oh my God. Trevor. Please. Huh? Please. Oh my God, son. Oh God, it's terrible. It's terrible. Was you in the tornado shelter? Hold on a minute. Let's go back. I want to see where you're at.
The tornado had been on the ground for 39 minutes, leaving behind a nearly 14-mile-long damage path in its wake. As it lifted into the sky, the tornado would take with it the lives of 25 individuals, many of them children. An estimated 377 people were injured, and over 1,000 homes were destroyed, accounting for approximately $2 billion in damages, making it the third costliest tornado in world history. For those who lived through the tornado, their lives were irreversibly changed. Amongst the destruction were tales of tragedy, bravery, and hope. Among them is the story of Jennifer Doan. Mrs. Doan was a teacher at Plaza Towers Elementary School. 8 weeks pregnant at the time, she, like all staff at the school, quickly rushed the students to shelter in the minutes before the twister struck. She and her entire class were huddled in one of the school hallways when suddenly the roof was torn off. Without any time to waste, she laid atop 2 of her students in an effort to shield them from the tornado's ferocious winds. Just as she did so, the cinder block wall they were sheltering against collapsed on top of them, breaking Doan's back and sternum instantly. After several excruciating minutes beneath the rubble, she and her students were lifted out of the debris and swiftly rushed to the nearest hospital. Miraculously, her unborn baby survived the entire affair, and a few months later was born, healthy and ready to face the world. Doan, still confined to a back brace from her injuries, chose to name her child Jack Nicholas. Nicholas being the name of one of the 3rd grade students she was protecting, who unfortunately didn't make it through the storm. Though she wasn't aware of it at the time, Jack's name was even more special than Mrs. Doan initially thought. A family friend later pointed out that the baby's first name is a tribute to all of the children lost at Plaza Towers. J standing for Janae Hornsby, A for Sydney Angle, C for Antonia Candelaria, Emily Knatzer, and Christopher Legg, and K for Kyle Davis. Christopher Legg, one of the children who perished in the disaster, like Mrs. Doan, was found by rescuers huddled over a younger girl after the storm. She told officials that he was trying to shield her from the tornado when the walls crashed down atop them. He died a hero, taken from the world far too soon. Danny Legg was Christopher's mother. Devastated by his loss, she vowed to help prevent similar school disasters in the future. Neither Briarwood nor Plaza Towers had specifically made designated storm shelters for students to shelter in. This left students in both buildings no choice but to shelter in classrooms and hallways. While this would have kept them safe in most weaker tornadoes, neither building was anywhere near strong enough to make it through the 200-plus mile-per-hour winds within the May 20th twister. Mrs. Legg has, in the years since, been a passionate advocate of legislation that would require new schools to install storm shelters within the state. Such a bill already exists in Alabama, another state all too familiar with tornadoes and tornado-related school disasters. However, little has been done on the state level in the nearly 11 years since the Moore tornado. While Oklahoma City did pass a city mandate in 2014 that would require new schools to build shelters, no such law has been passed on a state level. Partisanship, political gridlock, and questions surrounding how all the new shelters would be paid for are the main things stopping the state legislature from getting such a bill passed. Still, other cities with the money available to pay for such additions have followed Oklahoma City's lead. Tulsa City schools have fitted most of their buildings with shelters in the years since 2013, as has Norman City Schools and, of course, Moore. While the death toll in Moore was far higher than it should have been, it easily could have been higher if it wasn't for advanced warning from the National Weather Service, and the wide presence of home shelters within the community. Following the 1999 Bridge Creek Moore tornado, many and Moore and surrounding communities began to heavily invest in installing and constructing shelters within their homes, a movement that likely saved dozens of lives during the afternoon of May 20th, 2013. Even more residents have continued to invest in these shelters within the metro area in the years since the 2013 disaster, something that will hopefully continue to provide safety for those in Moore and surrounding areas if another tornado were to ever strike. Surveyors from the National Weather Service noted numerous structural deficiencies along the twister's path, most notably at Briarwood Elementary School. Their engineers determined that builders had cut corners during certain portions of the building process, most notably when connecting masonry walls and support beams throughout the structure. These deficiencies likely resulted in the structure caving in easier than it would have otherwise, though that's not to say Briarwood would have survived the tornado even if it had been built better. Rather, I bring this point up to discuss the fact that in much of the U.S., especially in Tornado Alley, the Deep South, and the Midwest, new construction is simply not up to par in quality. Cutting corners and skipping steps has become the norm, resulting in poorer constructed buildings that are more susceptible to damage from things such as tornadoes. It's an issue seldom reported on, but it's a serious problem with little being done to remedy it. Building codes must be improved, and construction companies must be forced to change their practices, or else people will continue to lose their lives due to poor construction practices. While nothing significant has been done on the state or national levels, Moore as a city has taken steps to improve home structure within its borders. In 2014, the City Council passed a resolution that would require new homes to be fitted with hurricane clips or framing anchors, plywood bracing, and reinforced garage doors, all in an attempt to improve structural quality throughout the municipality. This made Moore the first city in the United States to adopt a building code addressing the effects of tornadoes on homes, setting an example for numerous other communities to follow in the future. Like in any large-scale disaster, aid flooded into Moore after the tornado. Volunteers from around the world flew in to help with recovery efforts, send donations, and give monetary assistance to those who needed it most. The day after the twister, the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives held a moment of silence to honor victims. Pope Francis, as well as countless delegates from American allies across the world, also offered their condolences to the people of Oklahoma. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin declared a state of emergency, and President Barack Obama toured the damaged site in the months following. Many celebrities and relief organizations would donate to the victims, including then OKC Thunder forward Kevin Durant, Matt Camp of the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Red Cross, and Oklahoma native Carrie Underwood. Even after cleanup from the twister concluded, its effects could still be seen in the mental health of those who lived through it. Natural disasters on the scale of the Moore twister are well known to cause PTSD and other forms of mental illness in those that survive. This was especially true for the students at Plaza Towers Elementary. One such student there, Xavier Delgado, was merely 10 years old when his school was destroyed by the tornado. He lost 7 of his close friends that day, and mentally never recovered. Suffering from survivor's guilt and PTSD, nearly 5 years later in 2018, he took his own life. Dedicated to helping those in the community avoid the same fate as their son, the Delgado family has pledged to create a foundation to help pay for the mental health bills of those who survived the twister. Realizing the mental health crisis occurring in their community, Moore Youth and Family Services started Project Moore Help, a program designed to help children who lived through the disaster deal with the trauma they had experienced. In the years following the disaster, the program gradually saw an increase in school counselors referring kids to therapy, especially as the 2nd and 3rd graders who lived through the storm entered high school. Dedicating their operations to the memory of Xavier Delgado and all victims of the tornado, Project Moore Help has been able to help countless students deal with the scars that we can't see, and their program has stood as a model for other disaster-riddled communities to follow, especially those in the Florida Panhandle, who are still rebuilding years after Hurricane Michael decimated the region. Many schools there have created similar programs inspired by what was created in Moore. While some scars never fade, much of Moore and the surrounding areas impacted by the May 20th tornado have since rebuilt. Some never returned to their former homes, but by and large, the city has rebuilt back to its former status, and beyond. In 2022, Moore recorded a population of 62,793, an increase of 14% since the 2010 census. Indeed, against all odds, Moore today is prospering. A model suburban town with a dark past, there isn't another community in America quite like Moore, Oklahoma. And, in a way, hopefully there never will be. The 2nd and 3rd graders who survived the twister in Briarwood and Plaza Towers have now graduated high school, carrying with them the memories of their classmates taken from them on that fateful day. Most young children in Moore nowadays have no memory of the twister, and hopefully they'll never have to experience anything as terrible as the disaster that unfolded in their city on that fateful day in May 2013. At the time of making this video, it's been almost 11 years since the tornado struck Moore. There hasn't been another tornado in the US or abroad rated EF5 during that time span, making it, for now, the last EF5 tornado documented. 11 years makes this the longest recorded stretch in modern history without a tornado attaining that top rating. And, while we've gotten close to breaking it a few times, all we can do is hope that this streak will continue for years to come. This has been Overcast. Thank you for watching.